And hello, everyone, and welcome to College Football Wraparound. I'm Cooper Naylor. So glad you could join us. And as you can see behind me, we've got a new setup here for the studio. Got me a cabinet behind me, and then got some stuff put behind. So, just had some changes that I've done to the studio. So, of course, comment below what you think about it. You know, had a opportunity to add in some new stuff. Change up the set a little bit, and so I think it looks really cool. Able to showcase my bow. Got some of my awards from 4-H and various other things. Of course, got my Phil Steele magazine up there. So, of course, very fun to be able to showcase all my stuff that I like to have. So, tonight we've got a busy show. Of course, I'm going to start out talking about something that has been a big story for the last week. It's the Michigan sign stealing scandal. I'm going to get into that. I'm going to talk about my rankings. Talked about that last night. So if you didn't catch that, the rankings, I'm here to break it down for you. We're going to chat about Utah and USC. We're going to talk about Tennessee and Alabama. We're going to talk about Penn State, Ohio State. We're going to talk about Virginia, North Carolina. And then right in the middle, we have our question and answers time. And then, of course, I'm going to announce our next game coming up Saturday. So, busy show. So, to begin tonight, I want to start out by talking about this Michigan sign stealing scheme. So, now, I want to start off and make sure y'all don't misquote me on anything. I want to be completely honest with y'all. Everybody does this. I remember a few years ago, the big scandal was the Houston Astros in the MLB. They were stealing signs. Has that stopped them from winning? Look, everybody steals signs, whether it be the MLB, college football. I mean, go look at the NFL. What did they do to the Patriots when they had this stuff? So, I mean, it's not fair to call one team out and not say everybody does it. So, I mean, it's crazy what's going on right now in the world of college football. But I've got an article from CBS Sports. This will give you some information. So I want to start about, let's see. So right here it says, the number 2 Michigan Wolverines are in the midst of a dream season, though it's come with major distractions. The on-field product has been undeniably impressive, but sign-stealing accusations have created an off-field soap opera that seems to end with a new cliffhanger daily. All the while, the Wolverines remain firmly in the hunt for a third consecutive Big Ten championship and college football playoff berth. So at the heart of the investigation is staffer Connor Stalions, who allegedly bought tickets for more than 30 games, many of them Big Ten, and used illegal technology to steal signs. Stalions has been suspended with pay pending the outcome of the NCAA's investigation. Coach Jim Harbaugh, who has been entangled with the NCAA, is an obvious focal point here as well, but he has denied knowledge of the operation. So that's the beginning of the article. Of course, all you got to do is go to Google and search Michigan sign stealing scandal. You can find this article from CBS Sports. That's kind of like the premise at what is going on. So, again, if I'm being completely honest with you, it's bad. This is bad stuff. But it doesn't make sense to me, like I said, how you're going to get mad at one team. And isn't it pretty funny how Jim Harbaugh, at the beginning of the season this year, suspended the first 3 games. Of course, that stuff went on. And he's come back. They're 8-0 right now. Isn't it funny, though, how now this is coming out? I mean, if there was an attempt by people in the NCAA to try and force Jim Harbaugh to go back to the NFL, this just seems too obvious. And I don't understand what the deal is and why it's Michigan getting called out for this stuff. But yes, a lot of people in the media has been saying, oh, well, if they did it and if it comes out true, then they cheated. Yeah, they cheated, but so does every team. Here's the thing. Michigan got caught, going a little over the top from what it seems like. Other teams try to cover it up as best as they can, but they all do it. So, do I think that this guy will probably get fired, Connor Stalions? He'll probably get fired. But it shouldn't come without really thinking to ourselves, we've got other teams in the NCAA that do this. Pretty much every team. So, and I mean, that comes with a moment where we got to find a solution to this. And there's a bunch of other things in college football as well. But this is something that the NCAA, and really, the NCAA's failed. Let's be honest. So, if the NCAA has failed, and it's not just through the sign stealing scandals and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you can bring up other situations, the Tez Walker stuff in North Carolina. He gets to play halfway through the season. You're talking about probably some of their biggest games he didn't get to play for. And then the NCAA, after like 6 games, says, oh, he can play now. Okay. Another example of why the NCAA is failing. Look at the refs. Iowa and Minnesota the other day. The guy did not call a fair catch. So this player does not call fair catch, catches the ball after it hits the ground and rolls a little bit from a punt. He returns it for a touchdown. It is taken back because apparently one of the refs said that he called for fair catch. Although video evidence shows there was no fair catch. So if there's no fair catch and you got video evidence, I don't care that a ref said, oh, well, I already called it. Video evidence shows he didn't call fair catch. You got to overturn that, and so you got to stick with the original call on the field, which is touchdown. So, all in this to say that, and I think there's been a bunch of people who've been saying this, but the NCAA has got to step out of the way of college football, and college football's got to find some way to control itself. And if it comes where the college football playoff is going to be the predominant heading of college college football, that's what they got to do. Because the NCAA has failed, and they continue to fail. So that's a lot of what I got to say about the NCAA. And if you're gonna investigate Michigan, you better go ahead and go investigate every single other team in this sport. Or either you start coming up with a solution where they don't have to call out the signs where there's a possibility of them being stolen. Why don't you do like the NFL? Have the coach talk through a headset to the quarterback who's got a headset inside of his helmet. Why not? So that's all I got. That's just my frustration aspect that I wanted to go ahead and let y'all have so that I can get that out of the way early. So now, my rankings. So let me go ahead and show you the top 13. So we start out, Ohio State has moved back to number 1. And we'll get into Ohio State, Penn State here in just a little while. Oklahoma survived at home against UCF. They go to basically Ohio State and Oklahoma. I have them switch because, I mean, with the way Ohio State played against Penn State and the way Oklahoma played against UCF, I just had to swap them. I still think the 4 teams I got right here, right now, if the playoffs started today, this is the best 4 teams in the country, in my opinion. So, of course, Georgia, they were on bye week. They just sat there. Michigan, of course, they're going on bye week this week. They had the blowout of Michigan State, which was never fair in the first place. Florida State, Texas, Washington, Alabama, Oregon, Ole Miss, Penn State, Oregon State, North Carolina. So that's the top 13. Of course, Penn State lost on the road at Ohio State. North Carolina, we're going to get into them, but good grief. They always seem to have this loss each and every year, but they lost at home to Virginia. Yeah, so not a good week if you're North Carolina. And then you look at 14 through 25, Louisville, Utah, Tulane, UCLA, James Madison, Notre Dame, Florida. Florida's back. Tennessee, Duke, LSU, Missouri, USC. So, that is my rankings. Now, if we go back to the top 13, the one that, if you look at Texas and Washington, barely survived. Texas, of course, went on the road to Houston. Washington, I believe, hosted Arizona, or it may have been Arizona State. Either one of them survived that game. Alabama, of course, was down 20-7 at halftime, came back 34-20 to beat Tennessee. Impressive by Alabama. Oregon, of course, they moved up. Ole Miss moved up. Penn State dropped from 6 to 11. Oregon State, and then North Carolina dropped 4 places from 9 to 13. Of course, very interesting here with the 14 through 25. Really, I think it's the 10 to 25 range where it's harder to figure out where to put teams. So it's very interesting indeed about all this. The one that's very interesting, LSU, I really haven't moved them very high yet. It's because when you look at who they played, I don't know if they've really had that big win yet. Of course, they're on bye week this week, and then they've got Alabama. So here's my thing. And if they beat Alabama, they will move pretty high, I think. But still, I think they're quite behind right now. They're a good team, but I haven't seen enough of LSU to really tell me, they should be top 10. They're 6-2 right now. So, we're going to wait and see what happens. All right. So now it is time for me to talk about Utah and USC. And I've got some stats pulled up here on my other computer. So we're going to get into some team stats. But, this game, and how do I explain this? I thought Utah had the momentum from the kickoff until most of the way. I think they had the momentum, and of course, there's a little bit of urgency. I think when it came to being down 32-31, you got to drive. But see, there wasn't a lot because if you're Utah, you came into this game knowing USC's defense is crap. Let's all be honest. USC cannot play defense at all. They're terrible. And that's primarily why I think they're 6-2. Because they don't have a defense. And this is why they lose to teams like Utah over and over and over. Is because when you got a Utah team who just basically, they want to play hard football. I think, although they gave up 32 points, I mean, you're playing Caleb Williams, one of the best quarterbacks in college football. When you got that going for you, yeah, I mean, giving up 32 and still winning the game, I feel like you giving up just 32, I think, is pretty impressive if you're playing a USC team. Utah also, I feel like they just had the momentum all the way. And I just feel like Utah definitely showed they were the better team. So, getting into the stats of this game, when you look at the first downs, Utah won that 23-18. Third down efficiency, Utah was 3 of 13. USC was 4 of 11. Fourth down efficiency, Utah 2 of 3. USC never went for it. Okay, total yards. Utah 482 to 401 of USC. So they had 81 more yards total. Passing game, USC 256, Utah 235. When you look at the run game, Utah 247 and USC 145. So if you look at this, Utah definitely was the more balanced team in this game. Well, at least they were able to be more balanced in this game. And like I said, because USC's defense is terrible. So giving up 482 yards is nothing. They ran the ball 47 times, only threw the ball 23 times. So, I mean, there you go. Penalties, Utah had 8 for 50 yards. USC had 6 for 47. Both teams turned the ball over one time each. It was an interception for Utah. It was a fumble for USC. Now, here is what really killed USC in this game. Time of possession. Utah, 34 minutes, 42 seconds. USC, 25 minutes, 18 seconds. Utah was just the better team this game. They showed it. And I think that's the reason why I like watching Utah play is because they don't care who they're playing. They're going to play hard each and every night. And really, this is why Utah is a team to really watch out for in the Pac-12. Because you got the teams like USC, you got Oregon, you got Washington. But Utah's defending Pac-12 champions, folks. And they're showing you why they're the Pac-12 champions. Because they play team football. They play hard football. And USC was just terribly, terribly overrated. Now, I went back the other day and looked at some of my predictions from May of this year. And I got to tell you that to be honest with you, back in May, we're in the middle of summer. Well, summer hadn't even started yet. We're at the end of the school year last year, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to predict. And see, I had USC winning the Pac-12, had Caleb Williams in the Heisman race, which, I mean, Caleb Williams is probably still there, but not really that high anymore, in my opinion. And So having USC win the Pac-12, I didn't really think it out very clearly. And so I will say this. USC is terribly overrated from what we've seen this season because all of those people trying to tell you, oh, at worst they're a one-loss team and they'll probably make the playoff. That ain't happening. Look, this team is worse than the team they had last year because the teams around them are a whole lot better. So not only do you have Utah to beat you or Tulane, because Utah beat you twice throughout last season, which is pretty embarrassing, to be honest with you. Excuse me. But it's even more embarrassing. You got beat to Tulane. And now you've lost it. You went on the road to Notre Dame. Okay, we'll give you that one because it's Notre Dame. But you get your butts kicked at home to Utah. And that's really what happened, even though it was a 2-point game. Really, it was much wider than that, folks. USC, at best, from what I'm seeing, 8-4. They cannot beat Washington, and they cannot beat Oregon. That is what I have seen so far. Until they play better, I don't believe Oregon and Washington will even leave any chance for USC in their games against them. So, that's just my assessment of Utah and USC. So now we move on to Tennessee and Alabama. Oh, it's a revenge game for Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide. And first half, it seemed like they were just going to roll over and let Tennessee beat the crap out of them. And really, Tennessee kind of blew it in this one because they were up 20-7 at halftime. And looking at the stats, I mean, it's not like Alabama steamrolled them in the second half. The only thing you can really give Alabama credit is the time of possession. They controlled it. 32-19 was how long Alabama had the football. Tennessee had it for 27 minutes, 41 seconds. Penalties. Now, okay, here's been a big thing for Alabama these last few years has been penalties. Incredibly clean game for their standards. They had one penalty for 5 yards. Now, there have been a lot of things. The refs have been really torched on social media for the way that they called this Alabama-Tennessee game. A lot of Tennessee fans saying that it wasn't fair, that there was a lot of calls that they should have had on Alabama that did not call. Of course, that went unnoticed. And then Alabama fans, there's really one that Alabama fans probably are probably still irritated about. There was a defensive player for Tennessee who decided to take his elbow and just hit, I think it was one of the running backs, maybe Roy Dell Williams or Jason McClellan, whoever it was, just basically whack him in the head with the guy's elbow. So, I mean, that was a big miss for the refs in this game. Alabama, though, if you look at the first downs, Tennessee 22-20 of Alabama. Third down efficiency, Tennessee 8 of 18, Alabama 5 for 13. Tennessee, though, you're 0 for 3 on fourth down. And they kept going to it. I don't understand. Tennessee, of course, outgained Alabama 404 to 358. Tennessee passed for 271 to 220 of Alabama. Run game, Alabama 138, Tennessee 133. So Tennessee had 8 penalties, 55 yards. Tennessee only turned the ball over one time. Alabama turned it over twice. Alabama, they find ways to win games. And it makes no sense. So, yes, Bama, this is a good comment, though. Bama outscored Tennessee 27-0, second half. That is dominant. Yes. Here's the thing I will say about Alabama, though. And that is, maybe this was the half they needed to really right the ship. because you look at it, they haven't played dominant football all season. And then they played that second half against Tennessee, shut them out, outscored them 27-0. Now, I think the offense still is just so... It's not good for Alabama standards. Alabama has very high standards. And the offense is just not what Bama fans have come accustomed to. But if they can just find their bread and butter, if they can just find a couple of plays that really work, because I think we figured out Jalen Milroe, he's got the deep ball. He can't really throw it short. If the offensive line can protect their quarterback, and if they can give the running backs time to get something going, then that's the team Alabama's got to have. And so at 7-1, it's promising for what they could go down the stretch and do. I mean, they're definitely the top team in the SEC West right now. So it is going to be interesting as my computer decides to... Oh, that was kind of odd. Either way. I mean, Alabama, it's going to be interesting to see how they do the rest of the season. But hopefully that was the half that Bama fans can really look at and be like, okay, here we go. This is the Bama stretch we're used to. So we will see if that is so. All right, now, it is the point in the show where if you have any questions at all, you can type in the chat, and I will answer them. We've got also later tonight, we're going to talk about Penn State, Ohio State. We're going to talk about Virginia, North Carolina. Then I'm going to announce Saturday's game. That will be here on the channel. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat now. This is your opportunity to interact with me here on the show. And also, if you want to comment anything about my new studio set, please. I would love to talk about it because it's quite awesome. So, have any questions, please put them in the chat as I take a sip of water. But of course, very interesting stuff happened this weekend. And really, also next week, not only am I going to be reacting to my rankings, but, of course, the college football playoff rankings will be coming out Tuesday on Halloween. So that will actually be the first topic. We'll probably first go into my rankings, and then I will go into the college football playoff rankings right after that. So here is a good one. Why is Oklahoma not number one? Okay. So that's actually a good question. So he added in, do you not believe in them? Okay. Here's the thing with Oklahoma. They barely beat UCF. They had to stop a 2-point conversion just to beat UCF at home. Now, of course, Gus Malzahn, he's a good coach. I'll give him that because at Auburn, even though some of his teams were like 8-5, people are hating on him. It is impressive, though, because not many teams did what he did against Alabama, and that is beat Alabama, I believe it was like 3 times, and against Saban. And when I think it's when Auburn comes in with like a really good season, and Alabama's got to play Auburn. I think Auburn's beat them most of the time, if that's correct. So I will give Gus credit because I think he did do a good job with Auburn. Auburn fans are just hard to please. But Oklahoma I just feel like they have a little bit more to have to improve on. Now, I think they are the second best team in college football. Ohio State, on the other hand, played great defense against Penn State, and they really looked like a dominant team against Penn State. So that's the whole, I think Ohio State, they got 2 big wins this season. They've looked really good in those wins. And quite frankly, I think Oklahoma, they've had the 1 win against Texas, and then, of course, they've struggled a little bit. So I think the edge goes to Ohio State, but, of course, things are going to change. It's not like this is going to stay the same forever. So Oklahoma could find their way back at number 1 next week or at some point. So that is my reasoning for Oklahoma. All right. Of course, I'm still open to any more comments. I'll give y'all another minute or two if you want to put any more comments in the chat for me to answer. I am happy to answer your questions. So if you want to, go ahead and put that in the chat. All right. Well, since there's no questions, we're just going to go ahead and move on. So, Penn State, Ohio State. What was, for the most part, defensive slugfest in this one, for the most part. And so, we look at this game, and first downs, Ohio State 22, Penn State 15. Now, here's the one that really gets me. Ohio State was 6 of 16 on third down. Penn State, 1 of 16. Now, I think you got to give the credit to Ohio State's defense. And, I mean, clearly Drew Aller, he did not play good. He did not play good whatsoever. But I think it was mainly that Ohio State defense. That's a defense to really be worried about for any team having to play Ohio State. Okay, fourth down efficiency, Penn State 1 of 3, Ohio State 0 of 1. Total yards, Ohio State 365, Penn State 240. Yards per pass. Now, this is the big kicker here. Ohio State 8.2. Penn State, 4.5. There was nothing going very far down the field if you're Penn State. Run game, Penn State only 49 yards. You've got 2 great running backs, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, couldn't do nothing in this game. Ohio State, 79. Not a lot of run game for them either. So, either way, penalties. Ohio State did have more, 6 for 54. Penn State, 5 for 32. Turnovers, Ohio State had a fumble. Possession, again, Ohio State, 34 minutes, 24 seconds. Penn State, 25 minutes, 36 seconds. Ohio State dominated pretty much every facet of the game. And it's that third downs, and then just the way that Aller wasn't throwing deep at all. He was throwing short passes, and it was just not a good game if you are if you're Penn State, this was bad. This was really bad. And we'll see how Penn State does. But Penn State, they just, since they won the Big Ten championship years ago, they just can't do nothing. They can't win the big game. So here's the big question that really comes with this, and that is, what is the security of James Franklin? Because, yes, they're 6-1. Yes, they've been there every year, but they haven't won the big game. So just like how at the beginning of the season, we were wondering about Ryan Day. Like, is he on the hot seat because he can't win the big game? What about James Franklin? Is James Franklin on the hot seat? I mean, if someone has a comment on this, you can go ahead and put your opinion in the chat. I would love to talk about this. But, I mean, that is a big question because what has he done at Penn State that's really said, okay, Penn State, we're happy with this? Now, the only thing I will say is that the Big Ten is very academic. And, I mean, it's all good to be all in on academics. But also at the same time, if you're talking about football, and if your team literally is going nowhere, you are not putting your team in a position to win a championship, and that's ultimately what you're looking for. Can you get to that place to win a championship? James Franklin, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it for Penn State? Penn State has been able to recruit the talent. Can they make that run? I don't think so. I don't think Penn State is good enough to make the playoff. So, right now, I've got them at 11, but quite frankly, there's not a lot of hope I have for Penn State right now. They're a good team. They'll probably end up winning whatever bowl game they go to, but they're not making the playoff. They're not making the Big Ten championship game. They're not good enough. People are saying this could be the year for Penn State. No, this is not the year because you got to go to play Michigan. Now, the only way, here's the thing. If the scandal stuff for Michigan gets really bad and they have to start suspending players, which I don't think that's going to happen because, I mean, players don't have anything to do with it. Either way, if the players are affected by anything, Penn State's got a chance. But I think Michigan handles Penn State easily. So that's the one thing I want you to think about Penn State is what's the security of James Franklin after this? And then finally, we will wrap it up and with our last game to talk about, Virginia and North Carolina. And folks, just like Penn State, let me rephrase that. North Carolina and Penn State are different in the way that they lose. Penn State just can't win the big game. North Carolina loses to teams they shouldn't lose to. If that ever was evident, this is the moment right here where we look at this and we're like, how in the world did they lose this one? Okay, let me explain. They lost 31-27 to Virginia. A 1-5 Virginia football team. You're at home to make things worse. So, first downs. Both teams had 26 first downs. Third down efficiency. Virginia, 8 of 18. North Carolina, 4 of 13. Fourth down efficiency. Virginia, 2 of 3. North Carolina, 0 of 2. Total yards. North Carolina, 490. Virginia, 436. Passing yards. North Carolina, 347. Virginia, 208. Run game. Virginia, 228 to 143. Penalties. North Carolina, 6 for 58. Virginia, 6 for 40. Virginia turned the ball over 2 times to 1 of North Carolina. But when you have games where really bad teams beat really good teams, what's the time of possession? How did the teams do with the time of possession? Virginia, 37 minutes, 6 seconds. North Carolina, 22 minutes, 54 seconds. Clearly, if you have the ball 37 minutes, clearly you should win the game. Now, they won by 4 points, Virginia did. Virginia's not a good football team. The fact that they just went to North Carolina and beat North Carolina. And Virginia, we were talking about them getting upset early in the season. I mean, what is going on? North Carolina surely is in the race to go to the ACC championship game. But this really hurts if you're North Carolina. Some teams, and I mean, I'm looking at Alabama, where I could say when you lose to a good team, it's not going to hurt you. North Carolina does not lose to good teams. Well, I mean, they do sometimes, most of the time. But here is the big thing. They lose to crappy teams. This is crappy, losing to Virginia at home. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say about this, but North Carolina, I mean, maybe still has a chance. I don't know. It's very slim, though. It's very, very slim. So, all right. So, now, that is the games I was reacting to. Also, I've got some more questions here. Basically, why do I still have Tulane in my top 25? Well, I still think they're the top team in the Group of 5. And so I still think they're a pretty good team. I think they're not going to beat a lot of teams, but I mean, I feel like they can compete really well. So, and then why not Florida State at number 1? I just don't trust them at number 1, at least. I think they're a really good team. I'm going to stick with 5. I think that's a good spot for them until something else happens. All right. So now it is time for me to announce this week's game. And this one is one that people may be thinking, okay, this is not exactly a, really big game per se, but I think it's an interesting game. And it's always interesting, to be honest with you. Clemson, NC State, game's going to be at 1 o'clock Central Time. So be on the lookout for that. That'll be Saturday. So, of course, you start your Saturday with college football, SBN College Football Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. That'll go to 11. And then, of course, 2 hours later, Clemson, NC State, right here on Saber Broadcast Network. It's going to be awesome. Of course, Clemson's going to be coming off that loss to Miami. What can Clemson do? What is wrong with Clemson? If they lose to NC State, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to think about Clemson. Maybe Dabo should start looking at the transfer portal and maybe start looking at it as if, we could probably win if we go to the transfer portal. Or it could be either that or just these last few years have just been throwaway years for Clemson. Or is it that maybe it's time for Dabo to look at it and be like, maybe I'm not the right fit for Clemson anymore? Which I could never see a world where he wasn't the fit. So, I mean, I don't know. Weird things going on in Clemson. And hopefully we can get this figured out. But 4-3, Clemson? It's a strange season for sure. So, well, that is pretty much all I have for tonight. Of course, for those listening on podcast, I want to thank y'all for listening to the show. Of course, this is first time being back on a Wednesday night in a little bit. So, great to be here. And so with that, thanks for watching, everybody. And we will see you again Saturday. Goodbye, everybody.